Welcome to our thrilling series on the past and perfect tenses in English. In this video, we'll explore the captivating world of the simple past, past continuous, present perfect, and past perfect tenses, discovering when and how to use them to talk about actions that happened before now. Get ready to boost your language skills and share your experiences and stories with clarity and precision. So, find a comfy spot, and let's jump into the world of past and perfect tenses together. Simple past tense, completed actions in the past. First up, let's talk about the simple past tense. We use this tense to describe actions that were completed at a specific time in the past. It's like telling a story about something that already happened. For most verbs, you form the simple past by adding ed to the end of the verb. For example, I worked. You worked. He, she, it worked. We worked. They worked. To make a negative sentence in the simple past, you add did not or didn't before the base form of the verb. I did not, didn't work. You did not, didn't work. He, she, it did not, didn't work. We did not, didn't work. They did not, didn't work. And to ask a question in the simple past, you put did before the subject and use the base form of the verb. Did I work? Did you work? Did he, she, it work? Did we work? Did they work? Now, some verbs are a bit rebellious. We call these irregular verbs, and they have their own unique past tense forms. For example, go becomes went, see becomes saw, and speak becomes spoke. It's like they have their own secret code. Using the simple past tense, when and why. So, when do we use the simple past tense? There are a few main situations. 1. Actions that were completed at a specific time in the past. I met him yesterday. She graduated from college in 2010. 2. Actions that happened over a period of time in the past but are now finished. He lived in New York for 10 years before moving to London. They studied French for 2 semesters. 3. Past habits or repeated actions. When I was a child, I always spent my summers at the beach. She practiced piano every day after school. It's like the simple past tense is a time machine that takes us back to a specific moment or period in the past to talk about what happened. Past continuous tense, actions in progress in the past. Next, let's explore the past continuous tense. This tense is used to describe actions that were ongoing or in progress at a specific moment in the past. It's like zooming in on a particular point in time to see what was happening. To form the past continuous tense, you use the past tense of the helping verb be, was, were, and add ing to the main verb. For example, I was working. You were working. He, she, it was working. We were working. They were working. For negative sentences in the past continuous, you add not after was or were. I was not, wasn't working. You were not, weren't working. He, she, it was not, wasn't working. We were not, weren't working. They were not, weren't working. And for questions in the past continuous, you switch the positions of the subject and was or were. Was I working? Were you working? Was he, she, it working? Were we working? Were they working? using the past continuous tense, when and why. So, when do we use the past continuous tense? Here are the main situations. 1. Actions that were in progress at a specific moment in the past. At 8 p.m. last night, I was watching a movie. They were having dinner when the phone rang. 2. Actions that were in progress during a period of time in the past. While I was studying abroad, I was learning a new language. Throughout the summer, they were renovating their house. 3. Actions that were interrupted in the past. I was reading a book when he arrived. She was walking to work when it started to rain. 4. Actions that were happening at the same time in the past. While I was cooking dinner, my husband was setting the table. As the children were playing in the yard, their parents were talking on the porch. Now, it's important to note that some verbs, called stative verbs, don't usually use the continuous tenses because they describe states rather than actions. These include verbs like want, need, believe, and know. They prefer to keep things simple and stick to the present tense. Present perfect tense, connecting the past to the present. Moving on, let's dive into the present perfect tense. This tense is used to talk about actions that started in the past and continue up to now, or actions that have recently finished but still have a connection to the present. It's like a bridge between the past and the present. To form the present perfect tense, you use have or has and add the past participle of the main verb. For example, I have worked. You have worked. We have worked. They have worked. For negative sentences in the present perfect, you add not after have or has. I have not, haven't, worked. You have not, haven't, worked. He, she, it has not, hasn't, worked. We have not, haven't, worked. They have not, haven't, worked. And for questions in the present perfect, you switch the positions of the subject and have or has. Have I worked? Have you worked? Has he, she, it worked? Have we worked? Have they worked? Using the present perfect tense. When and why. So, when do we use the present perfect tense? Here are the main situations. 1. Actions that started in the past and continue up to the present. I have lived in this city for 5 years. They have been married for a decade. 2. Recently completed actions that have a connection to the present. I have just finished my homework. She has already eaten lunch. 3. Experiences or achievements up to the present. I have visited Paris 3 times. He has written 2 novels. The present perfect tense helps us talk about how the past influences or relates to the present, whether it's an action that's still ongoing or an experience that has shaped who we are today. Past perfect tense. Completed actions before another past action. Now, let's explore the past perfect tense. This tense is used to talk about an action that was completed before another action or a specific time in the past. It's like going back in time to talk about something that happened even earlier. To form the past perfect tense, you use had and add the past participle of the main verb. For example, I had worked. You had worked. He, she, it had worked. We had worked. They had worked. For negative sentences in the past perfect, you add not after had. I had not, hadn't, worked. You had not, hadn't, worked. He, she, it, had not, hadn't worked. We had not, hadn't worked. They had not, hadn't worked. And for questions in the past perfect, you switch the positions of the subject and had. Had I worked? Had you worked? Had he, she, it worked? Had we worked? Had they worked? Using the past perfect tense, when and why. So, when do we use the past perfect tense? Here are the main situations. 1. Actions completed before another action in the past. By the time she arrived at the party, the guests had already left. He had finished his homework before his parents came home. 2. Actions completed before a specific time in the past. I had graduated from college by the age of 22. They had moved to a new city before the pandemic started. 3. Reported speech with a reporting verb in the past tense. She said she had never been to Europe before. He told me he had already seen that movie. Now, it's important to remember that you don't always need to use the past perfect when talking about a sequence of past events. If the order of events is clear from the context, you can just use the simple past tense. The past perfect is like a helpful tool to clarify the sequence when needed. Past perfect continuous tense. Ongoing actions before another past action. Last but not least, let's talk about the past perfect continuous tense. This tense is used to describe ongoing actions that started before another action or a specific time in the past and continued up to that point. It's like emphasizing the duration of an action that was happening before something else occurred. To form the past perfect continuous tense, you use had been and add the present participle of the main verb. For example, I had been working. You had been working. He, she, it had been working. We had been working. They had been working. For negative sentences in the past perfect continuous, you add not after had. I had not, hadn't been working. You had not, hadn't been working. He, she, it had not, hadn't been working. We had not, hadn't been working. They had not, hadn't been working. And for questions in the past perfect continuous, you switch the positions of the subject and had. Had I been working? Had you been working? Had he, she, it been working? Had we been working? Had they been working? Using the past perfect continuous tense, when and why. So, when do we use the past perfect continuous tense? Here are the main situations. 1. Ongoing actions that started before another action or a specific time in the past and continued up to that point. She had been studying for 3 hours before her roommate came home. By the time the boss arrived, the team had been working on the project for a week. 2. Emphasizing the duration of an action before another action or a specific time in the past. They had been waiting in line for 2 hours before the concert started. I had been trying to call her all day before she finally answered. Remember, the past perfect continuous tense isn't used with stative verbs because they describe states rather than actions. These verbs prefer the simple tenses.
When I was young, I played all day. Past tense shows it was that way. I walked to school so far away. Past tense tales of yesterday. chose more. Happened first, then something new. Past tells perfect, gives the clue. Past tense tells what we did, things we saw when we hid with it, or a changed word. Past tense is what